The webinar should run for about 20 minutes, and we will be looking at an overview of fonts and typesetting, best practices using fonts and typesetting, creating eye-catching headlines, and modern fonts. So let's start with a quick refresher on what we refer to when we talk about fonts and typesetting. Let's break it down. So a font family refers to a series of fonts. In our example here, the font family is Arial. And under this family, we have the individual fonts. So we've got Arial Regular, Arial Italic, Arial Bold, and Arial Bold Italic. You can also see a screenshot here from inside the editor of where the font family and the fonts appear. Next, so let's talk about typesetting. This is a term we use when we're talking about the arrangement of text. This could be adjusting the font size, increasing the line height of your text, or changing the paragraph alignment. All of these adjustments are referred to as typesetting. You can see on this slide in the red box all of the typesetting tools that are in our download editor. Okay, so now let's look at some best practices using fonts and typesettings. There are no inappropriate fonts, but some fonts may be more suitable than others depending on your purpose. If you have large amounts of text, it's recommended that you select a legible font. Try and avoid bold and fancy fonts as they are harder to read when they're in a smaller size. You can see some sensible fonts on the left here and some less suitable fonts on the right. The fonts on the right are still great and they're much better suited for a heading or a title. Try and use capital letters sparingly. All caps is suitable for a heading or a cover title, but when it's in a large body of text, it can feel like shouting at the reader. And as you can see in this example, it actually takes up more space on your page as well. The size of a font is measured in points, or PT for short. It's common practice to use a size 12 font as or 12 point as a minimum for your text. Anything smaller than this runs the risk of being too small to read once it's printed. The only exception might be if you're putting it on the spine of your text where you don't have a lot of space. Just remember that the point size can appear larger or smaller depending on the font family that you choose. So for example, Arial 12 point looks larger than a brush script 12 point. Also remember that in our editor, the font will usually look smaller on the screen than when it's printed in the book, because your screen size is usually going to be smaller than the actual book that you receive. Next, watch your margins. By margins, we refer to the space around your text box. Be sure to leave plenty of space between text boxes and images. And most importantly, keep your text away from the red trim line, or it might get cut off in the final product. So keep it well inside that trim line. You can see in this example on the left that the text is sitting too close to the image and the effect makes it look unbalanced. In the right example, the space between the image and the text has been increased, and the text is also aligned to the left side of the image, so it looks neater. Our last tip is about font color. You can use whatever color you like for your fonts, but it's best practice to place dark font colors on a light background and vice versa. So in this example, I've used two of our most popular background images. The light yellow looks best on the dark background and the dark blue looks best on the light background. I'll show you later in the editor how to change the color of your font. All right, now for the fun part. We're going to look at a few different examples of how to make some eye-catching headers or cover titles. We'll go through the slideshow first and then I'll give you a demonstration on how to achieve them in the editor. So the first one is the overlap technique. This is the easiest example that we have today. So this technique is achieved by overlapping your text on the very edge of your image. It's easy to create and is pretty effective. As we explored earlier, I've used a dark colored font on the lighter part of the image. The next example is mixing two contrasting fonts. So this is another fairly easy technique and it's best achieved by using two very different fonts. So here I've used a classic font with a handwriting style font in the middle. But you also might want to use a bold font with a thin font in the middle perhaps, or vice versa. If you play around with it, you can see what effect you can come up with and what you like. The next one is using different directions. So for this kind of header, you can rotate the text box by 90 degrees so that your heading is flowing downwards. We've left equal amounts of blank space at the top and bottom of the cover to create balance. And I've aligned the text box to the top of the image. The color of the font has been changed to try and match the deep aqua color of the water in the image. And lastly, let's look at using the brightness tool. So in this example, we've used the brightness tool in the editor to make the cover image darker. Then we can place some white colored text in a stylish font over the top to create this modern effect. The text has been centered and the size has been increased. And the end result makes my trip to Italy look a little fancier. So lastly, we've pulled together a collection of modern fonts for your consideration for your next photo book project. A fresh and stylish font can really elevate the design of your project, so we encourage you to play around with different fonts to find the perfect fit. Whatever fonts are installed on your computer are available to use in our download editor. So you'll have a collection of pre-installed fonts that are commonly found on most computers. They'll be there already. However, you would have learned from part 1 of our fonts and typesetting webinar that you can download fonts from the internet to use in your projects. Again, head to our YouTube page and look for webinar 31 to learn more about installing fonts onto your computer. When you're installing fonts, we recommend going to the Google Fonts website as it's a trusted and reliable site, and there's over 1,000 fonts to browse there. All of the fonts you can see on this screen here are on Google Fonts, and they're some of the top picks. Some fonts are more suited to headings or titles like Fredoka 1 or Special Elite, but ultimately it's up to you. All right, let's have some fun, and I'm going to show you how to make some of these headings in the editor. So I've got the editor open, I've got a blank page on blank cover. I've actually chosen a photo from a recent trip to Coolum in Queensland. As much as I'd like to be in Italy and have lovely photos of Italy, we're probably none of us are going to be going there anytime in the near future. So there's no reason why you can't use your Australian holiday photos or even local trips to put together a lovely book. So I've just started on a completely blank page. What I'm actually going to do, because sometimes these the non-printable text here is in the way, so I'm just going to get rid of that, and to do that just click on the view menu and hide non-printable items just so we've got a nice clean page. The first thing I'm going to do is make my photo take up a bit more space on the page. When I make it bigger, if I hold down the Shift key, I won't lose any of the proportions of my photo. Actually, we can probably, we'll make it a bit bigger like that. There we go. So just taking up the majority, most of the page here. If I want to make sure it's aligned to the top and bottom, I can right click and choose Align and then Align Vertical Page Center. That was pretty close. Next, we want to add some text. So let's grab a text box. So over here we add text box, and we'll just make it a bit big. Oops, I'm just going to drag one of these edges out, make it a bit bigger. So to double click into the text box to add some text, I'm just going to call it our Coolum holiday. And that's really small, so I'm going to drag my mouse over it. And to start with, we'll change the size to, say, a 48-point font. Now, as I said before, depending which font you use will make that font size change. I've sort of had a bit of a play, and for this one I'm going to use the Fredoka font. Excuse my pronunciation, it could be wrong. So you just click on the font family here where it's got Arial. There's a little arrow to scroll down. If I actually type in the letter F, it will bring up all my F fonts, and there's Fredoka one, so I'll choose that. And then I'm going to make it a bit bigger actually. I think I'm just going to make it about 60 point. Oops, point. That's going to make it go on to the next line, which we don't want. So we'll just there. And then we just drag that onto, we want to do the effect where it's sort of half on the image and half off. Personally, that doesn't look great to me because the black on my blue sky doesn't quite work. In our previous example, the sky was quite light. So I'm going to try something a little bit tricky, and I'm going to invert the background color and the text color. So let's make the background, so click on this paint can here, and we're going to make the background black. I'll just do the whole page so it looks reasonable. And then double click on my text box and highlight all my text. And we're going to make that white. And I think that looks quite good now. So just doing that makes the text stand out a lot nicer. You can make it bigger or smaller if you want. You can drag it up, you can move it up and down, but that looks pretty good. So that's an example of the first sort of format that we did before. Next I will do, I'll actually, sorry, just thinking. I'll do the, where we did the full page with 2 different fonts. We'll do that next. So let's make my photo take up the full page just by dragging the top upwards and the bottom downwards. I am losing a bit of my photo, so if I double click on it to crop it, I might want to show a bit more of the sea. It's a bit nicer than the trees there. There we go. That looks pretty nice. And then what we're going to do with this font is, so we're going to use 2 different fonts just to make it look a bit more fancy. So if I double click on my text, I'm going to highlight it all. I'm just going to make it all one font to start with, and this time I'm going to use one called Domine. I think that's how you pronounce it. So it starts with D, and I've got a lot of D's there. It is Domine. But then just to make it a bit more interesting, I am going to make my middle word Coolum. I'm just going to drag, so just drag your mouse over it to highlight it. And we want to use like a handwriting sort of font. And a nice one that I found was called Great Vibes. So if I search here, I actually have downloaded quite a few fonts, so you can do the same if you wish to. If I choose Great Vibes, it just highlights that a bit differently, and I might actually just make it a bit bigger. I double click on it, and let's go 72. Oops, it's gone on to the next line, so we just need to drag it out there and might move it up a bit so that it's out of the clouds. And there you go, that's a different effect, and that looks really smart too, something unusual. Next, I'll show you the one where we make the color of the background darker, so my image darker, and then put the text over the whole photo. This is our 4th example. It's just easier to do that one first. So, so first of all, click on your photo, and to make it darker, you need to click on this, these 2 arrows at the top, and that brings up my options for brightness and etc. And I'm just going to click this to make it a bit darker. You can make it as dark as you like. And then I want to adjust my text. So this time I'm actually going to get rid of it all. Now I'm going to do it in capitals. So we'll do our, and I'm going to do each line, each word on a separate line. It's going to tell me I've overflowed. So we'll just make my text box a bit longer so that there we go. And so I'll just double click into it again and highlight all my text. Now this time, firstly I'm going to center it. So down the bottom, you've got in your typesetting area, you've got center. So we'll click on center. We also want to use a much bolder font. So I'm going to try one called Abril Fat Face, which I love the name of. There we go. And I'm going to go bigger again. And we want to center that on the page. To center that on the page, we right click on that and say align vertical page center. The horizontal page center is a bit tricky. You have to just do it manually with your mouse or cursor, because if you center it to the page, it'll actually center it in the spine. But there you go, something like that. Not quite sure if I like that 100%. I might want to make my photo darker maybe. Let's see what happens if I make it a bit darker. So it brings out the colors a bit more. There you go. But again, look, this is just one. I'm like you, I'm experimenting. If you don't like what you've done, do something completely different. All right, the last one I'm going to do is, actually I just realized that was not the font I wanted to use for this one. I'm just going to try one other font just to show you. Let's just try Special Elite. See if that looks better. I think that was one I was going to show you. Let's try Special Elite. Ah, yeah, see, I think that looks more interesting. Might have, yeah. Anyway, that's kind of cool too. It's something for you guys to play around with. So the last one I'm going to do is putting the text on the side, so changing the direction of the font. I'm going to bring my photo back down to make it smaller, and we're just going to make some space. We're going to make some space to put our text on the side here. I'm going to change my background back to white because I think it will look smarter for this, but it doesn't really matter. You can do whatever you like. And then our font, so this time, so we'll highlight it all. Actually, we need to put it all on one line rather than 3 lines. Oops, what have I done? 3 lines again. So let's just get rid of, I'm just getting rid of the spaces that I hit enter between each line. So I'm going to get rid of that. I am going to reduce the font because that's going to be way too big. Probably only want like a 48 size font, and this time let's do that Abril Fun Face. Yeah, that looks quite good. And then we want it all on one line, so let's just make our text box bigger. There we go. And then so firstly I'm going to change the color of the text because it's going to be on a white background and we don't want it to be white. So just highlight your text. To change the color, over here under the T for text, you click on the color button, and these ones are a bit boring, so let's click on other, and this shows you all the fonts from, you can click on define custom color and it shows you the whole color wheel. I might try and get something that's like the sky, so if I click on this blue, and then I can play with this color wheel by moving this thing around, don't know what you call it, cursor I guess, until I find something I like. That's not bad, look. That's a rough idea, and I'll click OK, and it's changed it to that blue. And now what we want to do is we will rotate it sideways. So you click on that green dot, see this green dot on my screen? I click it until I have blue dots on every corner, and that means that I am exactly 90%. There we go. I can put it up here so that it is aligned with my photo. You've got, see how you've got the green. Actually, it's not aligned because it's still centered. Let's just uncenter it. This down the bottom here, I'll make it left align. Now it's centered. Now it's aligned. See, there's lots of things you can learn, and even I'm learning as I go. I also just realized my photo is still quite dark. So let's go back to this arrow here, and let's change our photo back to normal brightness, 0. That's better. We might make the photo a bit longer too, a bit bigger. Something like that. Just remember, you will, with this particular design, some of your photo is going to go over the spine, this bit here, but you've got to try and imagine which bit's going to appear on the front of the page. That's just another way you can do it. And I mean, I haven't really done aligning it that carefully, but you can do all that yourself too. So there's a few good examples. Hopefully that gives you some food for thought. That's pretty much the end of the slideshow. So if anyone's got any questions, now's a really good time to send them through. And while you do, I'll just do a quick recap of what we have talked about today. If I can get back to my slideshow. So just try and remember to use sensible fonts for large parts of text. So if you've got a lot of text to put in, and use bold and fancy fonts for headings and titles. Try not to go lower than a 12-point font, as that won't be very readable. Be careful with your color on your different backgrounds. What you see on your screen is usually a good way to go. And have lots of fun with trying new and different fonts. There's plenty of fun you can have there. Okay, let's have a look to see if we have any questions. Just bear with me for one moment. Looks like everybody's happy with what I've been telling you. It's quite a nice topic to be able to play around with your text and make it look fancy. Sometimes you see things other people do and think, oh, that looks really smart, and just play around and you'll get lots of different ideas yourself. Okay, well, if there's no questions, I'll just remind you that you're always welcome to call our customer service team. We're here Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Melbourne time. Our phone number is 1300 553 448. Happy to answer your queries. And the other option is you can email us service@albumworks.com.au, or you can talk to us via live chat on our website.